oh my God, look at this little nugget. Yeah, well, I was going to do the whole video like that, but honestly, I can't. And is it even a nugget? Is it a nugget if it's not bad? I don't think that's how that works. This is a little Samsung MP3 player that I've had since probably 2008. It's the second or third technically the third MP3 player that I ever bought. The first one that I bought was this Creative Movo Slim. It was really slick. Yeah, 256 megabytes. It was enough to store a few albums, you know, maybe 4 albums worth of music. Obviously, depending on what bitrate your MP3s are at and how long the albums are. But, you know, at the time, I could throw music on it, and I could change it up, you know, weekly or whatever, and yeah, it did the job. It was not a bad little MP3 player. The second MP3 player that I bought was actually an iPod Shuffle, like the first generation iPod Shuffle. It didn't have a screen on it. You know, you just hit play, and it would play what was on there. And it might have been like 512 megabytes, I think. I don't know. The only reason I bought that, it was really, really cheap. It was on sale or on clearance or something, but yeah, I picked that up. I didn't have it for very long, you know, the fact it didn't have a screen on it. I don't know. I just didn't really care for it. And then this was made in 2007. Where is the model number on this thing? I think it's right there. YPU3. Yeah, this was made in 2007. It looks like late 2007. I think it was just pretty much like a random purchase. I really wasn't going in looking for an MP3 player. It was either like a Black Friday or a Boxing Day sale. I was in Best Buy looking around, and these were, one of the end caps just had a bucket, basically a literal bucket full of these. And again, they were super cheap. So yeah, these might have been like a year old at the time. This is 2 gigabytes. It's got no, you know, SD card slot. You know, neither did my Creative, you know, or the iPod Shuffle. So, you know, at this point, what you got was what you got. But, you know, 2 gigabytes, obviously, you know, that's enough for several dozen albums, perhaps. Again, depending on the bit rate and how long the albums are. Got it home, started using it, and quickly realized I really didn't like it. You had to use Samsung's proprietary software to transfer any music to this. Plugging it into a computer, it wouldn't just show up as a mass storage device. You had to use Samsung's proprietary software. I didn't like that so much, I think I was considering returning it. But then I looked into it, other people that had bought this MP3 player, and it turns out that the Korean firmware allows this to show up as a mass storage device. And so you can just plug this into a computer, it'll show up as a drive. Again, you can just copy and paste or drag and drop the MP3s to it. Of course, that's the way I like it. And apparently that's the way a lot of people liked it, because it became a common thing, people buying these in North America, to flash the Korean firmware on there. And of course, it would be in Korean, so you'd have to find the language and get in there and change the language back to English. But yeah, once you had the Korean firmware on here, which this does, this will just show up as a drive. And so yeah, I really learned to like it. The one thing I didn't like about it was just the fact that buttons on the front are touch sensitive. So of course you can't like see or feel those in the dark if you're you know, just listening to music in your room at night, or you've got it in your pocket. That was a big downside. But kind of lately I pulled it back out of storage and you know, went to turn it on, and obviously it didn't turn on because it wasn't charged. So I plugged it in and charged it, and yeah, it's still working. And I really appreciate this thing now more than ever. Now in a world where, you know, like my Pixel 7 doesn't have a headphone jack on it. And, you know, I've got a couple of those USB-C to headphone adapters, but they're kind of flaky. Like sometimes I'll be listening to music and right in the middle of a song, all of a sudden my headphones will disconnect. So I don't know if it's a common issue, if that's an issue you guys have ever had. And yeah, so I got this out of storage and I was like, oh, you know what? I think I could appreciate this thing now more than ever. And I turned it on, and you know what? I was reminded that this has got a really slick interface. The sound quality is great. I forgot it had built-in FM radio, but it does. So let's turn this thing on. Well, actually, first of all, show you its little trick. Yeah. It's one of those guys where it's just got the USB port built in. And so, yeah, you just move this little switch, and the USB port pops out, and you can plug that right into a computer or a USB brick to charge it. So yeah, it's one of those guys. You don't need a cable to transfer files to it. And yeah, this is the power button, so hold that down, and it comes on there. This is actually an OLED screen, not color. It's not a color OLED screen, just blue. But it is an OLED screen nonetheless, and you know, that's not going to come across on camera very well, perhaps. But it's a very nice looking screen. It looks really good in the dark. It's fairly sharp, and it's easy to read. But yeah, so this is the main menu. You've got your music, which would be your MP3s. You've got your FM radio, which obviously would be FM radio. Voice record, because of course, most of these little MP3 players at this time all had voice record. We've got settings, and in here we can change some of your equalizers and 3D setting, 3D kind of sound stage things. Yeah, most of those sound like garbage. I think I've got pretty much everything flat. I might have the bass on like 2, so a little bit extra bass, because yeah, it just sounds a little flat on most of my headphones without that. Yeah, you can change the way some of the buttons work. You can change the FM radio for different countries. Under system, you can change the voice recording bit rate. You can delete files if you want to delete some of the music or some of your voice recordings. You can set a beep when you press the buttons. You can set a volume limiter. LED effect is this thing on the edge. And I don't know why you would want always on. It by default, I think, is on button. Oops, did I? Yeah. So anytime you press a button, it flashes. Kind of annoying. It's as you can tell, it's fairly bright, as you could imagine in the dark. How bright that would be flashing at you. So yeah, I've turned that off. Yeah. So I'll play something here. Yeah, so as you saw there, I've got, this is basically the equalizer's flat. There's no 3D effects or anything like that on, so that's normal and normal. We have the bass enhancement on 1. So it's pretty much just flat with the bass enhancement on 1, the lowest setting you can possibly put it on. And it sounds really good. FM radio sounds pretty good on it. I don't think it's tuning in as good without having headphones plugged into it, as opposed to going to this amp for whatever reason. As you probably know, with a lot of things like this, when you plug in headphones, the cord is acting as an antenna. So I don't think we have a very good antenna on there right now. Normally the FM radio sounds pretty good, and it picks up a lot more stations than that. The buttons on top there, as you can see, they kind of double as play and pause. I forget what the user button does. Certain times in the menu, I think you need to press that. Obviously, as you saw when we were playing music, that goes through your equalizer settings. And then again, the power button there, so if we hold that down, it will shut down. And yeah, that's that. It's not a Nugget. Or is it a Nugget? It's a little Nugget. It's just a little guy. But yeah, it actually it's a pretty good MP3 player for its time, especially once you flash that firmware and you don't have to use some, well, what would now be an antiquated, completely out of date, you know, Samsung proprietary software. But yeah, even back then I didn't like that, so it's pretty cool that someone figured that out. Yeah. Be nice if it was you know, a little more than 2 gigabytes, but it does work good. It's a good little MP3 player. It's got a really nice nice screen on there. Like I said, I remember back in the day, really my biggest complaint was these touch sensitive buttons, and the fact that you can't feel those if you're in the dark or it's in your pocket. But yeah, other than that, very, very nice little MP3 player. So yeah, kind of a weird little video to show off, but like I said, kind of can appreciate this a little bit more today than I probably did at the time. You know, in a world where we got used to our phones, and then the phones don't have the headphone jack, and I like having the headphone jack. This little amp sounds really nice, little Class D amp, and that doesn't have Bluetooth. And again, none of my headphones have Bluetooth. I don't even own a Bluetooth speaker. Not a huge fan of Bluetooth. Look, it makes sense for earbuds and stuff on the go, but I'm not usually listening to headphones on the go. Very rarely. Maybe when I go on vacation, if I'm on a plane or a train. But if I'm driving in my car, obviously I'm listening to music in my car. When I'm at work, I'm not going to be listening to music on headphones. I don't work, you know, in a factory or something where maybe you could listen to music on headphones. I'm not sure. Some people maybe do. But yeah, when I'm just listening to music at home, I don't care if there's a cord on the headphones. But of course, you know, again, modern phones don't have a headphone jack. So yeah, kind of glad I got this little thing out, and really wanted to show that to you guys, because it is a really cool little MP3 player.